Hey there guys, I'm Renee. I am the owner and artist behind Chicly Reclaimed Decor, and welcome back to another YouTube tutorial. Today, I'm going to share with you how I transformed an old wood spindle, this candle cup holder, and the top to a glass jar into these beautifully ornate old world inspired candlesticks with a hint of patina. So if that is something you'd be interested in learning, guys, stick around because that is what I will be going over today. In a previous video, you guys saw me use part of this wooden spindle to create legs for a decorative wood riser. Well, I finally was inspired to use the other part for these candlesticks. So my husband obviously cut these level, which is very important. And I went about cutting off any jagged edges around the top. And then I used an 80 grit sandpaper to sand it so it is nice and smooth. And again, it's super important to make sure your cut is level so that way your candlestick stand up straight and it won't fall over. For the base of this candlestick, I'm actually going to be using a hard plastic top that I'm repurposing off an old glass jar. But to give it some weight, which is important to make sure that your base is heavier than the rest of your candlestick so that way it doesn't topple over, I'm going to be filling it with resin. So here I'm just making sure that my surface is level. That way my resin will cure evenly when I pour it into this plastic lid. I'm actually going to be using a rapid casting resin by Couture. This stuff sets up in about 10 minutes and it's a 1-to-1 mix ratio. I'm going to be measuring by weight, so I added this cup onto my scale and then I zeroed it out. This way the weight of that cup will not be calculated into the weight of the resin. And then I measured out 0.5 ounces of step 1 and 0.5 ounces of step 2 for a total of 1 ounce. And then I mixed thoroughly for about 30 seconds, and then you just go ahead and pour it into your mold, or in this case, the plastic lid. After about 10 minutes, my resin had cured, and from this point, I went about sanding it with an 80 grit sandpaper. Please make sure to sand outside or in a well-ventilated area because resin dust is not good for you to inhale. Now that we have made sure that our base is level and it has a good amount of weight to it, we are ready to move on to the next step. Next up, we're actually going to start building the candlestick and adding all these components together. So I've added the spindle onto this plastic lid and I'm tracing around it. And I'm also going to mark the top with a little T and the bottom of this wood spindle with a little B, just so I can keep things in order. Here I'm measuring out and I'm marking a little X so that way I can find exactly where the middle is on this lid. And then I'm just going to use a small drill bit to pre-drill this hole through this resin. This is just going to make it that much easier for my screw to make it through this really hard material. You also want to make sure that your screw is long enough to make it through the base and a ways into your wood spindle so that way you have a good solid mechanical connection, as my husband would like to say. And as you can see here, I have made it so just the tip of this screw is peeking out the top, and we are going to set this aside and move on to the wood spindle part of things. Same thing as before, I'm going to measure to find the middle on this wooden piece, and then I'm going to pre-drill my hole. This piece is solid oak, so it is very hard. So for me personally, I'm going to start with a small drill bit and then afterwards use a larger size to drill these holes into this piece. And then to connect the two, I'm going to match up the tip of the screw with the pre-drilled hole in the spindle. You also want to make sure that you countersink your screw into the resin. This means that the flat screw head will sit flush with or slightly below the surface that you're drilling into. This will ensure that the bottom of your candlestick still sits level. Next up, we're going to be following that same process to add this small candle cup holder to the top of this wood spindle. Are you liking this content? And are you interested in more DIY home decor and other artistically refinished home furnishings? Then please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you can be notified when I upload new tutorials. I'm going to be using a variety of iFlex wood products to create an ornate and detailed design on these candlesticks. And I'm going to be using Titebond Quick and Thick to apply them. And I also like to have a wet paintbrush to wipe off any glue that may seep out during the process. iFlex wood products are wood composite that are flexible when heated, making them super easy to apply to a variety of surfaces. If you're at all interested in any of the products that I'm using here today in this video, I will put a full product list down in the description below, as well as my affiliate link, just in case you are inspired to try anything that you see here. And you are not charged anything extra to use my affiliate link, but Couture Paint will give me a little extra thank you in return. So thank you for that support. Here I'm using the floral and leaf trim, and as you can see, I was able to easily unroll the trim and cut it to my desired amount. And then I'm just going to go about doing the same thing of cutting the amount that I need and gluing it to my candlestick. Here I'm simply just using artistic discretion as to where I want to put these trims. I also want to point out that you don't have to use iFlex wood products. There are a variety of silicone molds on the market that you can use with air dry clay or rapid casting resin, which I used earlier by Couture. While you watch me design these candlesticks, here are just a few factoids about the different molds and mediums out on the market today. So iFlex wood products, like I said, are very flexible. So if you have a piece that is very curvy, I find them extremely helpful to use. They're also stainable. So say you want to have a applique mold, but you want it to have a wood stain. Well, iFlex wood products are perfect for that. As well as a selection of larger molds like wall appliques and larger 3D molds like cherubs and ribbon rose garlands like you've seen me use in previous videos. Molds that I can't really make on my own. If you want to use air dry clay, well, air dry clay has a tendency to crack. So if you're going for a vintage or distressed vibe to your piece, they're perfect for that. Air dry clay is also very easy to mold to a variety of surfaces. The one drawback is that you will have to wait for your clay to dry or cure. But trust me, when it does, air dry clay is extremely durable. And that's also where quick casting resin comes in. It is an extremely durable medium. And as you saw earlier, after about 10 minutes, your resin mold is ready to use. You can also add a variety of mica powders to your silicone mold before you pour your resin, which creates just a whole nother multitude of creative possibilities. All of these things are great to keep in mind when you're thinking about using molds on your next DIY project. Okay, so now that we have our candlestick made from repurposed materials and molds, we are ready to start talking paint. So like I said earlier, we are going to be going for an old world style type finish with some hints of patina later on down the road. What I'm doing here is I'm just using a cheap chip brush, and I'm using a custom mixed kind of grayish black color. This is an acrylic mineral paint by Couture, and I am using a dabbing or stippling motion to apply this paint. Like I said, I'm going for a textured old world type finish, so if there are brush strokes or imperfections in the paint application, I am totally okay with that. Next up, I'm going to be adding some texture, and I'll be using Couture's embossing medium to do so. This is a smooth acrylic type plaster. You can use it in raised stencil designs, and I also have found it great for adding another element of texture to pieces. Same thing as before, I'm just using a cheap chip brush to dab or stipple this product into place, and I'm just using artistic discretion. I'm layering it thicker in some places and thinner in others, but I am being sure not to layer it too thick over the molds. That way I ensure that I won't be covering up all those beautifully intricate carved pieces. I also like that this texture is white because it is going to add just one more color to this aged old world design. I'm going to be adding multiple layers of paint, alternating between a dark and then a light. So you definitely don't have to use my colors of choice. You can come up with your own color scheme. But if you've seen any of my work or watched any of my videos, you definitely know that I am partial to green. So this is going to be the dominant color here, and I am going to be just applying this paint in the same motion as before, using a stipling motion, but I am by no means going for full coverage with this green paint. I still want there to be peaks of the black and the white embossing medium showing through. I love that look, and you could stop there and it would be perfect for an old world style design. But I want to add even more depth by again coming in with a darker color, and I'm going to be doing kind of a drippy paint wash with the black this time. So I spritzed the top of this candlestick thoroughly before I added a nice thick layer of this black paint just on the top here. And then I'm going to take my spray gun and I'm going to spray it pretty heavily because, like I said, I want some nice heavy drips with this black paint. And then I'm going to kind of let it drip for a few seconds, and then I'm going to come through with a rag and I'm just going to dab back any excess. And again, at this stage, you're just using your artistic discretion on how much you leave on or how much you take off. And here's a good side-by-side comparison of what the candlestick looked like before we added that last layer of black paint, and then you can see the results there on the left side after. Next up, we are going to be alternating back to that light color, but this time I am going to actually be dry brushing. For this technique, I'm going to offload the majority of my paint onto a towel or a rag before I gently brush over the texture and the carved details. Next up, to add even more age to this design, I'm going to be using Couture's 2-part Crackle. So I'm going to be applying their step 1 first. This is their size medium, and it's called size because the thicker you lay it down, the more pronounced your cracks will be, and the thinner you lay it down, the more you will have more along the lines of fine line crackle. Now after about an hour, that size medium, that step 1, will become tacky to the touch, and that is how you know that you are ready to apply your Crackle step 2. And I am just applying this directly over the places where we have already laid down the step 1. I definitely recommend working in sections when you're doing this. That way you can remember where you laid down your Crackle medium. Next up, to bring out the cracks in this Crackle, I am going to be using Paint Couture's Verde Green Glaze. And I am just using an artist's brush, and I am adding it directly over that 2-part Crackle. And then I'm going to use a rag, you can use a paper towel, and I'm going to wipe off the excess glaze. This is not only going to get into those cracks and accent them, but it's also going to add an aged element to the paint that surrounds the area. And here's what it looked like when we were all done with that step. And I absolutely love the subtle fine line Crackle that we achieved with the Paint Couture 2-part Crackle and the antique look that we got using their glaze. Next up, we are going to be adding the patina element to these candlesticks. My favorite is using Paint Couture's bronze pigment powders. This is a metallic mica powder. It's very fine. And here I have mixed it with their Extreme Guard top coat in gloss. When you're mixing up a metallic mica powder like this, it's really important to use a gloss top coat. That way you don't mask or dull the metallic sheen. And just like before, when I did the dry brushing technique with the white, I am offloading the majority of my paint from my paintbrush before I gently brush it over the raised texture as well as the molds. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I'm Renee. I am the owner and artist behind Chicly Reclaimed Decor, and I hope you enjoyed this tutorial where I shared with you how you can take repurposed materials and upcycle them into one-of-a-kind decor. And don't forget to subscribe for more DIY home decor and furnishings, with many more painting tips and tricks thrown in along the way. And I hope I've inspired you to pick up a paintbrush and do a little creating of your very own.